from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Welcome to another episode of Talking Catholic. I'm Kari, Janisse here, and I'm the coordinator of Youth and Young Adult Ministries at Our Lady Peace Parish, and also Talking Catholic podcast host, along with my good friend Mike. How you doing?
I'm well, Kari, and you have made it back successfully from Indianapolis.
I am here. I am back. Long bus ride there, long bus ride home, but
Kari was chaperoning and leading 70 young people on the way to.
Actually, it was 113 total from our diocese, and from our parish alone was 37.
Wow, and all to the NCYC, right?
Yeah, the National Catholic Youth Conference. It's held every 2 years in Indianapolis, and short term is NCYC, and the kids love shouting that out. NCYC, NCYC. You hear it all weekend long.
And you literally just rolled back in, less than 24 hours ago?
Just a little over 24 hours ago. Yeah, yesterday afternoon.
Okay. And for our new listeners from Domestic Church Media, where we're going to be broadcasting, this is our first episode with them, our 151st episode of the podcast, but our first with Domestic Church Media. We welcome you. I am the Director of Communications for the Diocese of Camden, and I've been sort of hosting this podcast with a stable of high-quality co-hosts over the last couple of years. Now co-helmed with Kari, as well as Mary McCusker, who is our communications manager for Catholic Charities for the Diocese of Camden, and Marianella Nunez, who works in the schools office for the Diocese of Camden, and she's the head of Latino enrollment. So each of them sort of brings a unique aspect to the show, and was really something that I wanted to promote. My former co-host, Pete Sanchez, who was with me for about 140 episodes, he is still co-hosting our monthly Talking Saints podcast, which you can still hear on our Talking Catholic podcast feed, available on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, and other places, your Alexa app, your Google app, all over the place we can be found. So if you want to go back to some of those old episodes, that's great. If you go to our SoundCloud account, you'll actually find a special playlist just for our Talking Saints. And the Talking Saints podcast is an award-winning podcast. It was won a Catholic Press Association award earlier this year for second place out of a diocesan podcast. So it's great. So I highly recommend going back and listening to it.
Congrats to Pete and Lori on that.
Yeah,
they do
Lori
a great
Power.
job.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's actually another great pod. She's been one of our guest podcast hosts before. So for our domestic church media listeners, if you're wondering what the difference between a podcast and a radio show is, a radio show takes place in usually a high-end, beautiful, like the Domestic Church Media studios with lots of cameras and microphones around.
I've been there. It's very fancy.
It's lovely. We were just there on Friday with Marianella. And by comparison, Kari, where are we recording at?
So today we're recording in the youth office at Our Lady Peace Parish in Williamstown. So we have a lot of youthful scenery around us, some couches and Xbox and Wii and crucifixes and great sights to be seen amongst the youth. And sometimes we're in other places like the Vault in Camden.
Most of our recordings take place in the Vault, which is literally a bank vault in my office, or next to my office at the Diocese of Camden Pastoral Center, and it's got the big heavy green door, the whole bit. But
it's a little scary being in there, I'm not going to lie. A little claustrophobic.
We do leave that door ajar for our more scared interviewees, but it's a great it's a great recording studio. And when I saw it when I came to the diocese 4 years ago, I knew that that would be a perfect place for it. So we're very excited about it. So we want to just welcome all of our new listeners on Domestic Church Media, and thank you for joining us today. But I wanted to ask you one other question with NCYC. Did you find it? You hadn't been in a couple of years. Did you still find it to be as powerful as the last time you've been there?
Yes, I think each one gets more and more powerful as you go. So my first one was in 2009, and I was a very baby youth minister. I did not know what to expect. I had never been there on my own as a youth. Although my youth group went, I didn't have the opportunity to go personally. So this was my first time attending back in 2009, and it blew me off my feet, as it does anybody that goes, and your heart just expands, your faith deepens. And as time went on, every 2 years I would send a group. So last year I got sick, last minute couldn't attend, but my group still went. So this would have been my fourth time attending, and came away. And I think, you always say this, but it was the best one yet, And It's because of the speakers, the ones that they choose. I just think the caliber gets better and better. The content gets better and better. It just seems just so solid. So the youth that leave there seem so affirmed in their faith, so deepened in their faith. And I could attest that was our group's whole consensus was how they were just set on fire from it.
And if you want to, talking to our new listeners, Talking Catholic also is on social media at Talking Catholic on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can actually see a lot of what some of the videos that Kari shot while she was out in NCYC. Just last question regarding NCYC, because we're going to have a special episode of it next week with some of the folks that went out. About how many people altogether goes in NCYC?
So
because it fills a football stadium.
Yeah, well, it fills the lower two levels. So the nosebleeds and the section just below it are empty. And I said, man, wouldn't it be neat if one year they could just fill the stadium? It'd be awesome. So every year I've went, it's always been the lower two levels, which are the biggest, plus the floor. So I guess if you took the floor seating, put it up there, we'd probably be pretty close to the max. And everyone loves the floor seating because you're really close to the stage and where everything happens. You're close to the altar during Mass. It's just really awesome. So we were blessed to have floor seating for the whole entire thing.
So it's like tens of thousands of people.
Yes, the number I've heard everywhere, I always say 20,000 plus because I've heard 23, I've heard 25.
Yeah.
That's youth and chaperones, and the kind of ratio is usually about 1 to 10 for a chaperone to youth. That's kind of general policy around the youth groups all around. So, every state is represented. We've met people from Hawaii even there, so that's been pretty neat.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you A, made it back alive, and B, had a great time. And I saw all the social media posts this weekend on the, like, I was following all
Every
the youth
feed.
groups. It was great. I must have come across 20 different photos and series of photos from the time there, and it looked like everybody was having a blast.
Oh, it's just dynamic. We had a blast. And so check them out again on Talking Catholic social media. I got to interview some really great people that were there, some of the speakers, especially like Sister Miriam, Father John Burns, and a lot of other Catholic speakers, Jason Everett. So check them out. There's some really great ones there.
That was impressive, by the way, when you pulled up next year's hosts in the back of the stage. When I saw Sister Miriam standing next to you, I'm like, oh well, she is quite the hustler.
Yeah, I try.
That was really that's a good sign of you could be a journalist, because being fearless is part of being a journalist. So nice job grabbing them for a video. So the actual reason where this podcast is being recorded today is where this is going out on Domestic Church Media on the first Sunday of Advent. So we thought it might be nice to have a conversation about Advent, and to do that, we brought someone you work with very closely, Kari, right?
Yes. So I am really honored and happy and excited to introduce not only my boss, my pastor, but my really good friend, Father Cadmus Mazzarella, a.k.a. Father Mazz. That's what he goes by.
That's it.
And he's here. Say hi, Father. How you doing?
Hi, Kari. Good to see you.
It's good to see you, too.
Good to have you back safe and sound, and all the kids and adults.
Yes, I probably would have been fired if I forgot one. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. But you didn't, so that's okay.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually, honestly, that's always been one of my biggest fears on going on trips like this. Not that we would lose any kids, but that's your main focus. Yeah, it's like because they're like herding cats on a good day and out someplace they've never been before. I got to imagine that was something you were pretty focused on.
It is definitely a big worry of that. So Father trusts me with that, and we've had a great relationship for many years. I actually, just going back, I met Father Mazz just about 20 years ago when I was a freshman in college, and he was serving at the campus ministry, Rowan Newman Club. Rowan Newman House is where you really served at Rowan University in Glassboro. So how many years were you there, Father, in total?
Oh, over 16 years.
So you were quite a long stint there.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think I came in about midway of that service.
Oh, really? When did you graduate from Rowan?
So I was there from 2000 to 2004. I graduated in 2004.
Because I'm actually doing the math in my head. Would you have been? I think you might have been there when my wife was at Rowan, because she would have graduated Rowan in '93, and she always spoke so highly about the Rowan Catholic campus ministry there. Really did a great job of making sure she was able to maintain her faith while she was at college, which is something we've talked actually probably as much as we talk about anything on this show. We interview the Catholic campus ministers on a regular basis, and I'm always blown away by the young people.
Yeah, absolutely. I was one of many before me who were there, wonderful priests with really solid ministries there. And the diocese has had a house there, a center, probably since the early 70s. And so I was like the third or fourth priest there, and I was there a long time. I always had other jobs going on at the same time, but that was definitely a favorite of mine.
I remember when you were there, Father, and I was there during those years. You were also vocations director during that time, and you would pay close attention to the young men. And some of us young ladies were like, "How come he's always talking to the guys or taking it out?" But in the end, now I know and I see some of them are now priests, newly ordained. Father Anthony Afanti in our parish was one of them. I remember at the time that would be around as a young man and cultivating that vocation in him.
Father John Rossi, a number came over at that time. A lot of our seminarians went to St. Charles Seminary, and on their apostolate day, which was Thursday, they came over to the diocese. So we gave them assignments in our parishes and institutions, including the Newman Center. Yeah. We always had 2 every year. So
leading Bible studies, I remember.
Anything. Cleaning bathrooms, you name it.
It is joyful anytime the seminarians come back. I really get a kick out of it and now most of our seminarians are all quite far away. They're up in Seton Hall, the vast majority of them. A couple of them in Yonkers at Dunwoody, and then we have 2, I think, at the NAC in Rome. So we don't get to see them as much as we can. But I will tell you that they're coming out with great formation.
Absolutely. You're right on that. Yeah. Absolutely.
So how long were you in the vocations director position?
Let's see. I know you were asking me to go back from the beginning. I actually just celebrated 34 years as a priest.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Father.
And I've been all over the place. Most of the many years in Glassboro. I started out as a newly ordained priest at St. Bridget's in Glassboro a few years. Then I went to administration. I was the vice chancellor and bishop's secretary, Bishop Guilfoyle, and then Bishop McHugh. And then I was the director of the Office of Youth, the new Office of Youth and Young Adult Ministry. We had not had an office for a number of years in the diocese, so
paving the way for us. Thanks, Father.
We started NCYC and World Youth Day and Summer in the City. We did all that, started all of that. It was really just myself and a part-time person and a very part-time secretary. And I was in that office for 10 years. And then from there, went to, I was also at St. Charles Borromeo, where we had the monthly youth masses for the diocese. And then from there, went to the Newman Center
right.
in 94. And I was there for 16 years. But I also, as you mentioned, was vocation director for a number of years. Before that, I was the director. We had a really cool experience called the Nazareth House. It was a house of discernment in Cherry Hill, where men can come who were either in college and or working and live there as they discern their vocation. So it was the former convent for the sisters that worked at Camden Catholic High School. So it's right across the parking lot from Camden Catholic High School. That was a wonderful experience for a few years.
I remember you took my husband to dinner there.
Yeah, right.
And it was probably the one and only time, and you said, this kid's not cut out for the priest.
That's right. Yeah, he didn't. He liked the food, though.
He did like the food. He still mentions how good that meal was.
He enjoyed the food. Yeah. And then the rest was vocation director for a few years, and then I finished up at Rowan and became the administrator and then pastor of St. Bridget's, went back to where I started, and now here. This January will be 11 years I've been the pastor here of Our Lady of Peace Parish.
Blessed to have you a second term.
Yeah.
Finishing that now.
And you have a great eye for talent in terms of bringing people in who know what they're doing.
Thank you very much. There's just so much great, wonderful young people there, so zealous, so hardworking, amazing, like Kari. And we just have to form them and help them and give them some of the tools, and they can really flourish.
I could say, Father, that I've been in this diocese now probably around, well, if you include college, around 20 years, but even just living in the diocese for the last 12 and a half years. And anywhere you go in the diocese, they know Father Mazz. Like you just say Father Mazz, and they know who he is.
That's
and
very
it's
true.
like
I've been around a long
you
time.
are a famous rock star in our diocese. Oh, Father, I love him. And they have a story that goes along with it, and how you helped their family, or how you married somebody, or blessed somebody, or baptized somebody.
Would you like to hear mine?
Yeah, let's hear it.
So mine was the first time I went to confession as a freshman in high school. It was to Father Mazz.
Oh,
at Gloucester Catholic.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
That was my first introduction.
That is neat.
And then when I found out later that my wife knew you, I was like, oh, that's kismet. There you go. There we are. That's
awesome.
So cool.
And I have countless ones.
Oh, yeah. And Kari, you just dropped a little bomb for everyone. You're not from South Jersey.
I am not.
But that's okay, because the domestic church media listenership has a lot of North Jersey, so you can represent them. That's
I am
fine.
Representing the Yankees, everybody. No, I do love North Jersey. It has a special place in my heart. Grew up in the Archdiocese of Newark, and not far from the cathedral, actually, the Cathedral Basilica there, Sacred Heart. And I call myself a transplant to South Jersey because after going to Rowan and kind of deciding to live down here now, I've been here now 12 and a half years living, so I love it. It's the best of both worlds.
Of course. I tell everyone that New Jersey is one of my favorite states in the Union, not just because I grew up here, but because it's around everything. You can get to everything. True. It's wonderful. So all of our listeners who are in New Jersey feel very happy about living in Jersey right now.
Definitely.
High taxes, but you still have happiness.
That's right. We're very happy. Good services.
That's right.
Mostly. But, I really did know, this being the first day in Advent, I really was kind of curious just to have a conversation. And in previous episodes, in previous years, as we would come up to a new season, we'd always like to sort of do a reflection on the season coming up. And Advent, I always found in our conversations was one of the more misunderstood. Like, we kind of have a concept of what Lent is, right? We know that it's, a lot of introspection in Lent and sort of, knowing what's coming at the end and resurrection, but also the trials of the passion and whatnot. Advent kind of gets short shrift because it's only 4 weeks long, and at the end of it comes a boatload of presents.
Yeah, exactly.
So can we talk a little bit about Advent and what we should be doing as Catholics?
Absolutely. It might be helpful to have just a little history. You mentioned about Lent. It is longer, and there's these wonderful days in the Holy Week celebration that just are amazing in terms of our entering into, the Paschal mystery. But Advent has a little different focus, and it might be good to start with the word itself. It means waiting, Advent, to wait. And it was used initially in reference to waiting for the emperor to come to your village or your city or your town. So it's a big deal. Yeah. A big deal. I mean, to have the emperor of the kingdom come, probably only happened once in someone's lifetime, if at all. So it was a very notable and important event and very important to prepare for. So that's really the key, really, with regard, I think, to Advent, of waiting, but also in joyful expectation. So there's like two focuses. One is to focus in on the celebration of the Lord's birth, his incarnation, and those 4 weeks, give us that opportunity to think about that with the readings and some of the other trappings that we'll talk about in a second. But there is a second focus that sometimes isn't always highlighted as much, and that's the final coming of the Lord. So it's really focusing on 2 comings, his first coming and then his final coming.
Wow. I probably heard you say that before, but I'm almost
sure
embarrassed to say, it feels like the first time hearing that in a certain way.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
the focus is not always there.
Because it sometimes gets overshadowed by the celebration of Christmas and also all the preparations, the lights and the shopping and the gifts and all of that.
Yeah. Don't feel too bad, Kari, because actually the first time it was brought to my attention on this podcast about 3 years ago by Father Robert Sinatra, I was the same way. I was like, wait, the first 2 weeks of Advent are focused on death as opposed to life, and you don't really think about it, but it really is. If you look at the readings at that time, they're actually a bit morose. I mean, it's very much about it's very much about not quite end times, but the Passion of the Christ. If you look at it in that perspective, and I wonder when it comes to preaching, Father, do you have sort of like an idea of how you're going to separate those weeks, as in terms of your homilies?
Yes, and I think the Advent wreath actually helps you with that. That you see that in every church, and it gives you like a little jumping off point, and also the people of visual. So, we do recommend that people have an Advent wreath, in their home as well. The fir, the holly signifies the life, that Jesus, God, as the author of life, brings forth in a circular fashion. And then the candles and the 3 purple candles, which would represent the penitential nature of Advent. And by the way, over the years, in the centuries, it's kind of changed a little bit. Initially, in the first few centuries of the church, actually a little bit more than that, it was a much more penitential season, much more fasting. Like you really don't hear fasting associated with Advent, more of course with Lent. But initially it really was, particularly in Spain and in Gaul. Not so much in Rome, as I guess in Rome. They didn't want to give up their good food too much. But eventually, in the Middle Ages and then the Council of Trent, they adopted more along the lines of the Rome point of view. Not as much fasting, but it's still very laudable and acceptable to maybe do some penance, do some fasting to prepare. The rose-colored candle, the third color, the third Sunday, signifies the joy that it's getting close.
Mm-hmm.
Then back to the purple color for penance as we get to the fourth Sunday of Advent. And then, of course, that goes right into the vigil for Christmas on Christmas Eve, and then starts the Christmas season. So there's no Gloria, and part of it is kind of like Lent, but another part of it, which is kind of interesting, that by having the bells rung at Christmas Eve, after not hearing them for at least basically 4 weeks, it kind of gives you refreshes you about the joy of the angels sing at the birth of the Lord and the bells ringing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember hearing one time in a talk about Advent that it was recommended to give something up. As a priest, do you think that, Father, that's something we should do as Catholics during these 4 weeks?
It's very interesting. I think it's particularly in this parish. I am seeing some things maybe in other parishes and maybe in other parts of the country, but in our parish, there's been such a wonderful movement, including with the youth during Lent, to take very serious the penitential nature or the mortification of giving something up. That there are a lot of people in the parish who actually do something also for Advent. And I think that's really, really neat. Another thing, some families, maybe they create their own little trappings in addition to the Advent wreath. Some families may start, a new tradition. I know one family that they would go a Christmas morning to a soup kitchen every year and serve a meal early, and then come home and do the normal open up your gifts and
normal festivities.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the manger, the Christmas manger. That's very traditional. St. Francis of Assisi, as we know, started that. Families may have that, say a prayer around the manger.
Yeah, my family did that growing up. Actually, it was such high anticipation because we could not open our gifts until we put baby Jesus in the manger and sang happy birthday to him. So we're all like, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. And I'm sitting there, the little, as I call myself, my family, they know this too, they call me the golden child, and I'm like, no, we got to put Jesus. Like, I was like the only one taking it seriously, and everyone else is like, let's just get to the gifts. So I even still today try to fight for that spot to put baby Jesus in when we go up there on Christmas Day, because it is important. And I do that with now my own family, is like leave baby Jesus out until that actual Christmas Day and put the focus on the Lord first. And of course the gifts are part of that, but that's, the main focus is about the Lord and his birthday, and then the gifts that we're thankful to be celebrating in his birthday today and making that a focus. I think that's really neat.
And that kind of begs something that I have been trying to fight through. Like as we talked at the beginning, every Advent is a precursor to Christmas, but that month of December, it's such a cacophony of noise and lights and Christmas parties and shopping and everything that goes with it. And since I've come to the diocese, I've really tried to use Advent to cut through all of that. You're not gonna block it out. It's too much there.
Not completely.
No, I went into Lowe's to work on something, and I'm seeing all the Christmas ornaments up there, and it's like, oh man, I really need to buy some of that stuff. I don't know. I gotta stay focused on what I need. But using Advent that way to cut through the noise, I think is very helpful for Catholics. In addition to those tips and sort of those visual ideas of how we can focus on the Lord even when we're seeing all of Santa Claus around us. Are there prayerful things that people can be doing? We oftentimes, and I'll throw this out there, oftentimes we think of confession naturally year round, but it's highlighted during Lent. Is that something we should be doing more during Advent?
Absolutely. I think probably every parish has special confessions or maybe an Advent penance service that they would hold. Usually schools, grade schools, high schools would have special services to allow the children to receive the sacrament of reconciliation. Definitely, I think that should be a part of it. It is, I think, still for a lot of people. Reading some of the scriptures that are from the Old Testament, very appropriate with regard to the prophecies of the Messiah, particularly Isaiah, Micah, and then, of course, also the narratives around, the birth of Jesus, that, we hear Our Lady, the Archangel Gabriel coming to Our Lady, the Annunciation, and then, of course, the story of his birth at Bethlehem. that can be very, very, very helpful maybe for a family, particularly with children, to maybe read those scriptures and then just talk about it, with perhaps the manger scene right there, the Advent candle, maybe to sing Advent hymns. A lot of times we do jump right into those very lovely Christmas hymns.
O come, Emmanuel, though. That should be first.
Well, O come, yeah, that's the best one.
We
love
need that one.
Love that. We sing that to death here. We love that. There's a few goodies that are out there, not as well known, of course, as the Christmas ones, but I think there are maybe some of the things. And then I think doing things with light. In 1 John it says that the light came into the world and pierced the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome the light. And as the time has changed in this area of the country, it gets darker earlier. That aspect of the brightness illuminating our hearts and our souls and our world can be very powerful imagery.
Sure, yeah. When we were growing up, we had at our parish, they called it the Advent Wreath Workshop, and they gave you the ring, and they had the evergreens and the candles, and you actually put it together as a family. It was really neat. It's something I actually want to bring to our parish. I say it every year, and I forget about planning it then, and then here comes Advent. I'm like, oh man, I meant to do that. But it's a very fond memory I have as a child together building our Advent wreath, and I still have the ring myself. I always build my own every year, and I do know craft stores sell these rings. I've seen them, and then actually it's neat. It's relatively cheap because all you do is go to somewhere like Home Depot or Lowe's that sells fresh Christmas trees and ask them for the trimmings, and then they're free, and you can make it yourself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's a fun thing. I do it with my family every year because we have, like I said, we recycle the ring every year. But it'd be neat, like if parishes could do that, or at least again families on their own, to start that Advent season, and then every Sunday light it and have a little prayer time, a little reflection time during that Sunday to really put that focus on what are we preparing for, what are we preparing our hearts for, what are we getting ready for in this season. And I think you said a lot of really great tips on that, but that'd be another one that I would throw out there for our listeners.
Good thing to do.
The going back to the idea of cutting through the noise, that's not to suggest that joy and noise aren't wonderful this time of year. And I often sometimes feel I come down too hard on December, in the sense that, all right, I know I'm going to watch all the Christmas shows. I might even watch the Christmas movies on Hallmark. I'll do all, because it is a joyful time and it's a wonderful time. It's just that I think it's easy to lose that opportunity for self-reflection, that exists certainly strongly during Lent, but it seems so easily glossed over during Advent.
Yeah. We don't have all the parties and everything during Lent every weekend.
That is true.
It starts off with ashes, and it seems like it's just solemn for 40 days until you hit that Easter Sunday feast.
I mean, if you think about the context, we live in a very wealthy country and wealthy world generally, that we can have all these parties and do all this shopping. If you think about it, for most of history, maybe each child had one little gift. Maybe it was a homemade little gift, even at that. Or maybe one gift for the whole family, or no gifts. And they just had a meal together. I mean, I've heard that from, older people growing up maybe in different parts of Europe or whatever. It just was not like the materialistic thing it is, where people feel they have to shop and get everybody, all these gifts. And I'm not saying there's anything necessarily totally wrong with that, but if you have a big family and there's a lot of commitments and there's parties and things like that, it can lead to a very, very hectic time. You can easily lose the reason for the season, as they say.
I'll admit it, that in years past, I've been better in the last 2 years maybe, but in years past I've had a very difficult time during the Christmas season. And I know a lot of people do. I know there's a lot of depression and anxiety goes with this particular holiday in general. But I really did. I would have a very difficult time focusing on Christmas coming until maybe if I got lucky, Christmas Eve, I'd be like, oh wait, I need to be joyful about this. This is a wonderful time of year. But it can be difficult, and I encourage everybody, when you're going through difficult times like that, talk to someone. I mean, the beauty of the podcast is I get to talk to people as part of my job on a regular basis, and I will say that it helps me a lot. But I'd encourage people, talk to your pastor, talk to your youth minister, talk to somebody that is particularly well trained in listening. And if you're having those difficult times or you're looking for something, reach out. But by all means, do not sit in your home or go through with tunnel vision and do nothing. Take this opportunity to help yourself.
And there's so much joy to be had.
It really is.
And one of the things I know I've learned along the years, especially my young adult and adult years, is it sounds so corny, we hear it all the time, but it's better to give than receive, right? Mm-hmm. And so some families I know that do this, and my family has done this in the past. Instead of exchanging gifts and having that pressure of this big long list of people to buy for, we sponsor different organizations. For instance, one year we got a lot of tags off of the Ronald McDonald House tree, and we bought all those gifts instead of buying each other gifts. And it was a great way to put the focus off of ourselves, the stress off of ourselves of buying what we would have been like 15 gifts for each other. Now we're buying like a vacuum cleaner for the house at Ronald McDonald House and something else.
Great thing.
And I think it brought us so much more joy than opening up the gift that most people, I know when they do a Pollyanna or they do gifts, they write down suggestions of 5 things they would want. And it's like you're basically telling the other person what to buy. Here, we're not even caring about ourselves. We're looking outward. And that's what Christ did, right? He came to serve, and he came to serve others, and not to get the gifts for himself, but to be the gift for all of us. And so in that, we are imitating Christ, and in that we find joy. I'm sure all of us understand a way to kind of give joy is by giving of ourselves, and that only comes from Christ. Even people that aren't religious, they feel that feeling, and they're like, where does that come from? It's God working inside. He made us, and so that's his little piece that he put inside of our souls for all of us to feel. And I think that could be lost in the mix of the craziness and stuff, but if we find little ways to do it, it's amazing. A few years ago in our town, I had caught wind of somebody that just had a baby that just lost their job. They were living in a very low-income area of our town, and they hardly had money for diapers. And they came to I think they had come to our parish asking if we had diapers. And we give out food. We have a food pantry, but our means only go so far. So we did not have diapers to be able to give to this family. So on my own, I went and contacted the family, and it was a grandmother who was asking for her grandchild. And I said, all right, well, I'll see what I can do. And I put something out on Facebook, and the response was overwhelming. I think I got about $500 handed to me between people Venmoing me and saying, use this for the diapers, or people just sending it to me. And
you had a truckload of diapers, too.
I had to get a second car to come with me to deliver them. And we didn't just get newborn sizes. They were set for sizes 1 through 4, which having a 1-year-old, I know it's expensive,
That's right.
The look on the man's face when he opened the car door and saw the diapers, I could see it right now, and it was the greatest Christmas gift I could have given anyone, to see his face and the joy fill up in his eyes. And he said, I want to get my baby baptized. This has inspired me to get more involved in the church, and it really planted such a seed in his heart to see that people cared. People cared beyond just what the church could have done, just a community of people. Like I said, I put it on social media that knew me and just knew that it would do good for others. And I think that's what this season, is about, and where we can bring that in. Father, can you give maybe some resourceful tips of just different things faith-wise that people can do in their faith, like whether it be meditating on the joyful mysteries maybe, or little reflections that they can read each day to, not everybody's going to get that person knocking on their door asking for diapers, but how can we prepare spiritually so our hearts are ready?
I'm just so impressed in our church. You have just so many resources. There's all these companies now, and there's a plethora of meditation books and for Advent, and they're readily I think available also online. Again, reading the scriptures, the joyful mysteries are perfect for that. And again, just maybe just meditating on especially Mary's yes, to allow Christ to be born into her womb, and Joseph's being given assistance, of course, from heaven in a dream. Never hurt, right? To get some, God thinks of everything. He's always willing to help us, accommodate us. But Joseph's yes too, and of course we have a model in the Holy Family. I mean, kind of leads right into the Christmas season. But obviously, they did give their yes, and their lives were forever changed, and the world was forever changed because of their ascent.
Yeah. And, there really are a lot of resources out there. I mean, you mentioned some written ones, but honestly, there are a ton of YouTube channels that are actually dedicated to this. I mean, let's face it, half of the stuff I learn nowadays, I would learn via YouTube because I'll say...
From fixing your car to spiritually being prepared for Advent.
It's really true. And there really are some good channels. I mean, Ascension Press has their Ascension Presents channel, which has a lot of great tips on it. Just a side note and plug, Kari will soon be having her own YouTube channel starting in the new year. As a matter of fact, it'll be geared towards youth ministers, but she'll be one of 5 that we're rolling out in the new year. We're very excited about that. And who knows, come Lent and Advent of next year,
we may have some youth ministry-based ones for me, and some of the others will have their Advent-based particular episode.
I'm running the schedule. I guarantee that they'll have stuff. They'll have the stuff there. But it really is true. And like anything else you find out there, I always tell people to look for the source. Look for trusted names that if you're looking for something else, don't even necessarily trust me and Kari. You can trust Father, but don't necessarily trust me and Kari. But go out there and look and see what sort of resonates with you. I mean, quite frankly, you can even find joy in pop culture. I love Christmas movies, right? I love them. I love all of them. And if you look at them, the really good ones, it's never about what you got. It's about what you did. I mean, shockingly, the one with Jimmy Stewart was just on last night or 2 nights ago, and I couldn't believe it. It seemed really early in the year to do that, but It's a Wonderful Life, right? I mean, that's a great show about a great movie, classic with a lot of tragedy in it. Quite frankly, a lot of concern, a lot of drama, but he fights through it and he learns, and he's blessed with working with Clarence and the angel working on his wings to really see everything that he had done in life, because he had become the pressure had become so overwhelming for him. He no longer could realize what he had brought to the community. And I would venture to guess a lot of our listeners and people who haven't listened to the show have actually done a lot of good in their lives, but there's this pressure in secular society that is difficult to get out from under, particularly during the holidays. And Advent gives you that opportunity to get outside of the weight and get close to God and focus on what the true, like you said earlier, the true reason for the season, and really find some peace. Just because it's the Christmas holidays doesn't mean it has to be crazy. It can be a peaceful time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I give a tip to the youth always when it comes around the Advent season, and I say, one just small way we can witness to our faith and actually bring joy to others is you're shopping, you're doing, you're checking out, and everyone's always quick to say Happy Holidays, and I always say just respond with Merry Christmas to you too. Yeah. What's the worst they can say? I've had it said to me before, oh, I don't celebrate Christmas, I'm Jewish. Oh, okay, well then Happy Holidays to you, and you just correct it. But once you gotta give permission to let Christ into it and say Merry Christmas, I've had the greatest responses. Oh yeah, Merry Christmas to you too. They you've given me permission now to say it back. I'm not allowed to by corporate rules, but I'm allowed to say it now once you've said it to me. Right. And it kind of sets a little it's really true. It sets a little light off kind of inside. I feel like yes, I did that. I got Christ in there in the midst of the craziness of the long line that I just waited in to make this purchase, for whatever it might be or whatever gift you're buying. But now you're bringing Christ into it in a very small, simple way. But our world has kind of turned Christmas around a little bit and made it really more about the holidays, and we can get really lost in that as well in everything else we've talked about too so far. So it's a small way, like a challenge almost, to bring Christ into other people's lives as we are going through our Christmas season and the Advent season of preparing for our hearts and then in turn being a little evangelist to others.
Maybe a few other little things. Some people enjoy going right over there to St. John Newman Shrine. His feast day is January 5th, which is still in the Christmas season. And that the upper church is just so amazing and beautifully decorated. Of course, his body is downstairs. Some people take little pilgrimages, maybe to a different shrine. Even some secular, like the flower show or Longwood Gardens, something like that, where you are connecting maybe a little bit with nature. Maybe go into the orchestra, singing Handel's Messiah or something like that, Rockefeller Center up in New York, and can really help a little bit. But definitely is to meditate, I think, and really try to contemplate on what it is that has come to us as great gift.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite memories, you're talking about other things you can do during the holiday season. There, fell right into
I know,
Christmas
I said it
season.
earlier too. It's ingrained.
It's darn secular culture.
We have to do due diligence to break it.
But during the Christmas season, St. Charles Seminary in Philadelphia, they always have a Christmas concert, and I think it's the second Sunday in December this year. It's so great. It's an open house. You go around 1:00. You can walk the beautiful grounds of St. Charles Seminary, and then they have the actual performance in the what is that facility called? The chapel there,
St. Martin's Chapel.
St. Martin's, the gorgeous St. Martin's
Beautiful,
Chapel, very old school chapel, and the music sounds just beautiful in there.
I imagine,
Well, we have a concert here usually at Christmas here in
our
parish.
parish has one with their choir. For our North Jersey listeners, I believe Sacred Heart Basilica in Newark does a choir concert. My parents have gone to it many times, and you were saying, Father, too, about going up to Rockefeller Center. Every year, I know growing up, we went to Rockefeller Center, but we also went to St. Patrick's Cathedral Basilica in New York. And so we have North Jersey listeners, but for South Jersey listeners, it's a quick train ride from Hamilton. You can get right up there. And I've taken our young adult group there many years to visit during the Christmas and Advent season, depending on when we could go. Sometimes
Mother
it was
Cabrini
after Christmas.
Shrine also.
Yeah, those
City.
are always ways to kind of just lift your spirits and keep your faith in it, along the way.
Famously, this is a side note, but we have the CFR sisters on often. Not since you've been one of our co-hosts, but in the past we've had them on often.
Know them well.
Yes, and the every year at some point during Advent, their novitiates go to St. Patrick's with a facsimile of the baby Jesus, and they just stand outside of St. Patrick's and they just wait there, and they wait for people to come up and ask them what they're doing, and that's when they evangelize.
Wow.
And they say it's amazing. They'll have people come from all different faiths, all different denominations. We'll just see them there because they are very striking in their habits, and just ask them about the Advent season and the Christmas season, Christ, and it's amazing. So I highly recommend stand outside your church with baby Jesus and see what happens. See if you can figure it out. But there are things you could think outside the box, do other things.
Yeah, it's always great to incorporate Christ into our daily life, and I think people have a little more sense of openness during this time of year, so you kind of have you're a step ahead to be able to evangelize at this point of the year versus, in the middle of March, and you're trying to evangelize, people like, what, who cares? You're
kind of right. You can get away with things a little bit more. Every year, my Knights of Columbus Council and a number of the local councils, we walk in the Pittman Christmas Parade, and Pittman in New Jersey, there was a legal fight to have the Christmas banner removed from Pittman, and Pittman fought back against it, and the church, many of the churches fought back against it in that town, and the Christmas banner is still shown. But just as a sign of extra importance, the Knights of Columbus every year walk with an enormous Keep Christ in Christmas Center sign that goes from both sidewalks all the way down, and we walk with it the entire time. We get a round of applause every single block we go down. People love to see it. They really, there's an appreciation for it.
I saw that on TV too.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. Yeah,
it's nice.
And I think the Knights have done a great movement with selling the signs and the magnets for the car. Keep Christ in Christmas. I see some people leave them on all year round too. The magnets just
my
to
wife
kind
would
of
be one of them.
Yeah, maybe they forget to take
Scuffed
it
up the
off.
car and
I'm not
everything.
sure, but
No, because it's a great
it's
sign.
intentional for the most part. Yeah, it is. So
it really is. I mean, I think we should live. You mentioned earlier about Happy Holidays versus Merry Christmas. I worked in a corporate law firm where I had a lot of Jewish colleagues. They wished me a Happy Hanukkah every year, and I thought that was the sweetest thing when they knew I was Catholic, and they would still wish me a Happy Hanukkah, and I love that. I'd always wish them a Merry Christmas as well as a Happy Hanukkah. And I think we should take joy in our similar holidays. I don't think we need to remove all of the reference to the holiday to
it's a shame, but it's always like the minority that fights for that and gets it versus the majority of people that do believe in it and want it are kind of voted out against because of the minorities in those cases. So any little way we can incorporate it, whether it be the giant sign in a parade or a magnet on the back of your car, it's a great great witness to our Catholic faith for sure.
Or just not referencing Merry Xmas on your lawn sign or something like that. That's another one. My father banned. I remember I wrote that somewhere when I was a teenager. Not to be funny or anything like that. I just seen it everywhere, so I was just going to use it. And my father said, "No, we are write that correctly."
CHRIST.
Right.
Yeah.
Very
Nice.
important. You've taken away the most important part of that word. Get it back in there again.
Less Santa Claus, more angels.
Yes,
let's do that.
exactly.
That's right, Father. Absolutely the case.
It's interesting, like working with youth, and Father, I think you have seen this. You did mention earlier about a nativity scene. A lot of families don't have them right now in their houses, the nativity scene. We asked some of the kids, do you have it? And we hear, my grandma has it, but we don't have one in my house. I think if we can maybe even make a movement more with putting the putting the nativity scene during Advent in your household. So if you're listening, get one, because that is the greatest symbol of preparation, is that Advent Christmas manger scene that we see. And
you just gave me my homily for this weekend, the first Sunday of Advent.
There you go, Father.
Thank you. It
is true, though, that there are two things we would fight about in growing up. It was who got to set up the manger and who got to set up the Christmas tree. Me being 6'2", it was good for me because I got to do the tree, but I never got to do the manger scene. And I hated that. It was terrible. Although we had the same thing. The baby Jesus doesn't go in until Christmas morning.
Yeah. Where is he? He's sitting in a plastic bag in my drawer. And I was like,
no, that's just Mary's womb. It's an analogy for Mary's womb.
Exactly.
Just going back, on this show, we do a lot of pop culture references. I am curious, do either of you have a beloved Christmas movie or television show from your youth or middle age? For me.
Well, our family, every day on Christmas, we totally put on the 24-hour Christmas Story playing. So
Naturally.
You can catch different scenes. And I always feel like I walk by, come back, it's the same scene, from 2 hours later, just playing again on the next one. So, and we always are quoting that movie constantly, you'll shoot your eye out and all of that. And the other one that is a classic is the Griswold Family Christmas.
Of course,
we're always
Christmas Vacation. Yeah.
Every year, Christmas Eve. And I'm the one that does the blessing every year. Thank you to my family for always letting me do that. I guess youth minister, she's got to do it. I don't know. And I get made fun of half the time for it. And then at the second half of it, my aunts and uncles are always like, you do a great job. You got to do it. My cousins are poking fun at me.
Now, see, they make the same requests of me, and I keep telling them I'm in PR. I'm not on the prayerful side, but every year I'm terrible.
He works for the church. He has to do the prayer.
That's my aunt. That is exactly what my Protestant aunt says all the time. And I've actually taken to realizing I can never remember prayers. I'm terrible at prayers. I admit that. I write a prayer every Christmas morning on my phone, and then I got it right here. And I pull up my phone and I read it from there. So
yeah. So for us, when I do the prayer, I always hear the blessing. So we're quoting those movies constantly. So those are the two in my family.
That's funny. What's your father?
Well, I hate to admit this, but I have to. In all truthfulness, The Grinch That Stole Christmas.
Yes, that's a classic, of course.
Awesome.
That's
just wonderful.
And it has a great,
it does. The expanding heart.
It does tie into our faith.
Well, thank you. I agree. I think so.
I'm just happy the Grinch made it into the list. Yeah, for me, it's always been It's a Wonderful Life. White Christmas, as well as its precursor, Holiday Inn, which is a classic black and white that I really recommend to people. And then in terms of TV shows, the very rarely seen 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. It was one of those, Croft and whatever companies.
Yeah.
But it was an animation.
Stop motion animation?
Yeah, but it wasn't. This one was just regular animation. Okay. And it came out the year I was born, 72, but it very rarely makes it on the TV. So about 10 years ago, maybe I saw it. I DVR'd it, and I refused to get rid of my DVR because it's the only place I can find this copy of the show.
Oh, man.
But it's beautiful. It's about a mouse, and anyway, it's a wonderful show.
Yeah, and those always bring us back to our childhood. We have one like that in my family that is rare, although I've been seeing a little bit more on social media coming back. But Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, it's a Jim Henson show.
Wow, that is old school.
Yeah, and I have it on DVD, so it did come out on DVD, so I don't have to save my DVR because of it. But that is one that my husband makes fun of me. He's like, I never heard of this. Why do you watch this? It's so stupid. And I'm like, no, this is a classic. This makes me feel like I'm 8 years old on the couch with hot chocolate and my brothers and sisters around me watching, this this movie, and that's really what brings me back to my childhood. So we do enjoy that one for sure.
And one of you don't see it very much anymore, but it's also available on DVD. Is the Little Drummer Boy one, which is nice because it actually brings it back to the actual, Christ-centered effect of our faith.
Yeah.
And I'm just impressed that they were able to get it on TV so many years ago. Much like the biblical reference that's in the Peanuts Christmas show, which is another
they
wonderful
read the whole
one.
Gospel of Luke. I believe.
Luke, and every year that no matter what we're doing, I don't care any part of that other episode we see, but I always make sure we shut up and listen because I want to see this, because it's just so you just don't get to see that very often on free TV anymore, an actual reference to Christ. It beats me up every time there's a show that comes out that has anything to do with Christianity. I'm thrilled. I'm usually upset in the end because they'll butcher it in some way, but I'm happy they're at least making the attempt.
Yes.
It's true.
Yeah. So do you have any ideas about how you'll be spending your Christmas season yet, Father?
Well,
aside from on the job.
Yeah, on the job, a lot of masses, and
we have multiple masses here. We had the extra ones in the school gym in addition to the ones in the church, just to help with the overflow.
Yeah, many masses. So for me, after it's all over, Christmas Day, and I go see my family and all of that.
I always have to remind people, and like you alluded to earlier in the podcast, that Christmas doesn't end on Christmas Day. It's a whole season. There's a whole 2 weeks you get to appreciate.
You really need to savor it because it's such an incredible mystery and such an incredible reality. You really need that extra time, to take it in and meditate on it. So it goes all the way till the feast of the baptism of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
It's an octave, right? The Christmas octave. So it's literally like 8 days in a row of celebrating Christmas.
Each day as if it was Christmas Day. That's right. Yeah.
So I always try to just remember that too, and having that joy for 8 days. After, it doesn't just end on December 25th and everything changes over to in stores Valentine's Day and sometimes even Easter. You're like, what? What are you doing? But here we are celebrating 8 days of Christmas, and it's just really powerful.
It really is, and it's something to make sure that we always focus on, that these are not one-offs. These are opportunities for us to take the Christmas season and bring it forward. It's only 2 months away from 2 months into the future, and then we're back to Ash Wednesday again. And that whole Carnival season, that whole 2 months out of Christmas, I because it's always in the dark of winter and it's cold, and I always try to, this is actually a joyful time. We should all be very excited about this, because Ash Wednesday is coming, and we can be more self-reflective at that point and worried about our souls. Not that we shouldn't be worried about our souls at all times, but this is a light time. Let's be joyful. There's a lot of great things to do, and I do know that as soon as Christmas rolls past, that's when the priests find their opportunities to go travel a little bit and get out of Dodge, because it is a I don't think people quite realize, but it requires quite a bit of energy out of our priests during the Christmas and Advent season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think especially Lent, but Christmas too. I mean, there's a lot of extra confessions, and very often people will want up at the door or come to the church. The season makes them reflect on things, or they're in touch with memories or things like that they might want to come back to church and come to confession or something like that.
That is nice.
Yeah.
I always like hearing stories about that.
Yeah.
And we also, I know we see it here, and I'm sure many churches see this increased need too. So we do a big drive each week. 1 week is children's toys, 1 week is men's gifts, women's gifts, and there's a lot of preparation in that at churches where we're packaging things up and handing them out. So I don't know how involved you are with that, Father. We do have a staff member, but maybe in other churches that don't have as many resources, the priests are hands-on probably a little bit more with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the spiritual end of things with the confessions and people talking to you, that is a blessing to have our priest available for that.
And you actually mentioned something that I didn't see it much when I was a kid, but now I see it everywhere, and I'm hoping all of our parishes do it. Should probably check it out at some point. But the parish giving trees are it is ours. I think last year at St. Bridget's in Glassboro, they ended up rehanging the tree 3 times because so many of the tags were taken, and there was always somebody in need, and we were able to be so generous, and it really made it a big deal. And I'm not suggesting that every parish is going to be like that, or even that need may not exist in your parish or in your community, but it's really something to if you get that opportunity to give back, give back. I think those are some of the points we've talked about today.
Yeah,
give back,
give back.
Find the joy. This is a wonderful season. Don't freak out because you didn't get all the gifts you wanted or all the gifts you needed to buy other people.
And leave Merry Christmas in there.
That's right, and lots of Christmas cookies. We didn't even get into my love of baking Christmas cookies. I was actually going through all of my Christmas cookie recipes on Saturday, going, I'm going to make some changes this year. Instead of my chocolate crackle, it's not going to be a red velvet crackle. Instead of
switching it up.
Oh yeah, I'm putting some red and green M&Ms in my stuff. Yeah, I'm really trying to boost it up. So anyway. That's what we got coming. But I want to thank all of our new listeners on Domestic Church Media with staying with us today. And Father Mazz, I want you very much to thank you for coming down here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thank you. We record these a little early. So it was sort of late in the evening. So we're very happy for you to be here. And Kari, thank you for making it back from NCYC.
Yes, thank you all for having me. It's really a blessing always to share these podcasts, and stay tuned for the NCYC recap coming up on our next one.
Next weekend, that's right. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you later.
God bless.
God bless you.